Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today. My name is Sarah Franklin, and I'm a Product Marketing Manager for the platform. And joining me today is Dave Carroll, and he's our Director of Evangelism for Force.com. And we're very happy to be talking to you today about the features that are coming in Winter 11 in the platform. Before we get started, I would like to review our Safe Harbor statement. Salesforce.com is a publicly traded company, and as such, we don't want you making any investment decisions based upon the content we talk about in this webinar today. If you have any questions about our Safe Harbor, feel free to visit us online at salesforce.com/investor. And I want to remind everybody before we start our webinar today that this information will be, of course, made available via replay. In addition, you can find all of the information about the upcoming release on our developer.force.com site/releases. We'll have the webinar replay, as I mentioned, documentation, additional training and highlights. You can also participate in discussion, and you can do that by using the hashtag, as you see here, of #Winter11. So Dave, we've got a lot to talk about today. On our agenda for the platform features, we're going to start with some information about Chatter, and then some updates to our security and sharing. And then we'll talk about some sites in Visualforce and some really exciting tools for developers, how we can help you better manage your app lifecycle and do the testing. And then we'll show you some dashboards and reporting. And we've got a special treat that I think the developers will be really excited about at the end. We've got the question and answer session after our slide and demos. So as we go through this, through the presentation, if you have any questions, input them on the bottom right-hand portion of your GoToWebinar screen. We'll be monitoring those throughout the presentation, and we'll dedicate 15 minutes to be going through those in detail at the end. And then, of course, we're covering platform features, but we've got Scott and Satasia lined up for the hour after ours to discuss the features coming in Winter 11 for the apps. So stay tuned for that afterwards. You might be curious how we decide which features to implement. And what we do is we turn your ideas into features. If you visit us at ideas.salesforce.com, you'll see ideas from people just like you, from developers, from admins, from end users. And our product managers and product marketers, we religiously look at this and we decide which features based on popularity to implement. So go ahead and check that out and tell us what you think. So without any later ado, let's go ahead and get started. And I'm really excited to talk to everybody about what's going on with Chatter. And before I get into some specifics about Chatter, first, if you remember last release, we really introduced this clean and fresh new UI for Salesforce.com. And this new UI we're adding a bunch more features in Winter 11 as well. One thing in particular I want to point out for developers is that your setup link has moved. So as you see in my screenshot, setup is now in the menu bar underneath my username. So there's not that link, so don't worry. Your permissions haven't been revoked when you log in and you don't see setup. It's still there. It's just under the menu. And then Dave's going to be talking about the system log as well, so there's a lot of refinements there. And then as you see, the setup is actually in the new UI. So when we deployed the new UI, setup wasn't. You might have seen some of our demos, which we did have the new UI, and you're all saying, how do I get that? How do I get that? Well, now you have it in Winter 11. So really excited about that. We've also added this new Chatter tab, and we're calling this Chatter Central. So Scott and Satasia are going to be going into a lot of demo later about Chatter, but just at a high level, you see on the left panel where we've got the ability to see all of Chatter, chats that are to me, groups. I have my Chatter feed as you would see, and then there's these other cool features like recommendations. Scott and Satasia are going to be talking that in more detail, but this is just a brief look at what's coming in Chatter Central. And as I mentioned, there's a whole laundry list of features that Scott and Satasia will go into that include updates and enhancements to how we do emails and notifications. You can chatter on more objects such as activities and dashboards. I already talked about recommendations. Search is an awesome feature that Scott will show you, and filters and topics. So there's really a lot of features coming in Chatter. And the other really exciting thing is that Chatter is really being extended to any device that your users are on today. So as a developer, you want to be able to create awesome applications and embed this functionality that Chatter brings and extend it to iPads, iPhones, BlackBerries. We've had the Salesforce mobile application, and now we're introducing this brand new Chatter application. So this is a really lightweight way for people to participate in conversations that are happening within Salesforce using the mobile device. And I want to go ahead and show you a quick demonstration of that right now. Here I am logged into Chatter, and you see the typical information going on. See, this is a group that I've created for our release webinar, or release preview webinar that we're on today. And what I want to do is show you how you can extend this to the iPhone and to the iPad. And so what I'm going to do is real quickly, I'm going to bring up Scott's iPhone. And I had a question because I needed to have the logo for Scott, from Scott, for the actual release preview. So I've logged into the Chatter, and I'm going to go ahead and upload this image for release preview for Winter 11. It's here on the iPhone. I'm uploading that right now. And so let me skip back over, and let me go over to my iPad that I have on my simulator. And you see that same information that you saw in the web browser. And let me go ahead and refresh on my iPad. You see, Scott has just told me I have the question. I need that logo for Winter 11. He's gone ahead and uploaded that for me. So what else do I have going on in my Winter 11 group? I see that Robin has sent me some information about Chatter that's coming in Winter 11. And this is a PowerPoint. So let me go ahead, and you see I can actually click right onto this PowerPoint, and it loads in my iPad. And this is actually some other really great news that we have about Chatter, is you see all this awesome functionality that's coming, and by default in Winter 11, we're actually going to go ahead and turn this on for everybody. So we're really excited about this. So for Winter 11, all the admins out there, definitely make sure that you're ready. And I see Robin's created this great deck which talks about how we're already alerting users on the login page. We're already giving impromptu we're prompting people in the app. So that's really exciting news. So let me go back to the PowerPoint. One more way that you can extend Chatter, I've got so much here, is that we also have a Chatter desktop. This is an Air client that now, just like anybody that's using Yahoo IM, where you have those little bings that pop up on your laptops, which, as I talked about before, if I had that going right now, sometimes you get embarrassed when your screen has pop-ups. But this is a really good way for you to not really have to rely on emails to be collaborating, but now you can use the Chatter desktop. And so as a developer, Chatter really makes your apps better, and you want to be able to package these up. And now with Winter 11, we give you the ability to, in your packages, incorporate the Chatter components. So Chatter packages, they're not separate packages. They're actually the same packages you know and love, but we've added the ability to add your Chatter configurations to those packages. And we talked about how everybody's going to be having Chatter turned on, but don't worry if for maybe some compliance reasons or regulatory reasons or documentation purposes you need to opt out, you need to not have Chatter turned on. We're providing you that capability. But that means that as a developer, you need to be cognizant of how your packages are then deployed. So we wanted to make it easy and elegant for you to handle those exceptions that you might encounter if you have somebody that's trying to install your application and they don't have Chatter enabled. So Dave, right here, we're looking at this code, so maybe this might be some best practices that developers would want to use in dealing with their exceptions, right?
Yeah, certainly when we're dealing directly with Chatter feeds and whatnot in our code, we want to follow this kind of pattern for detecting and understanding whether or not that feature is actually enabled. And it really goes beyond Chatter. There's a lot of other features that we can't take for granted might be enabled in an org. So this is a really great pattern to follow when building applications.
Awesome. So while we're looking at code real quick, there's an additional metadata API attribute that's been introduced in Winter 11, and this gives you the ability to enable or disable whether you want to track the feed history and track the history of the fields. And so with that being said, I've talked about this standard UI, but Dave, people have really used Visualforce to customize their applications. What does Winter 11 offer them in ability of incorporating Chatter into those applications?
Well, Sarah, let me tell you. Basically, we've had a lot of people writing a lot of very creative and innovative applications using Chatter inside of Visualforce, using the data model of Chatter. And what we've heard was that there's a lot of things that were very difficult to do, things that maybe developers were doing over and over again, and we were asked, well, why don't you take and create those as components, break them out of the UI, and give us Visualforce components so that we don't have to do that work. And so that's what we've done with Winter 11. We're introducing the first 4 Chatter components in this release: Chatter Follow, Feed, Followers, and Feed and Followers. So rather than kind of try to explain this, what I'd like to do, if I might, is show a demo.
Demos are always good.
Okay. Well, first let me get into my org here. Oh, I'm right in the middle of the screen. So this is a Visualforce page. It doesn't look like a Visualforce page, but honest to goodness it is. We can verify that by looking at the page editor here. And this is a very simple page that just has a detail component to show the detail of the page. Now, you can use the Chatter components with any kind of Visualforce page and combined with any of the other Visualforce tags. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show how we can go ahead and add a Chatter feed very easily to this page with one line of code. So I'm just going to drop that right in here and move this down a little bit before I save the page. And once I save the page, my detail portion is still intact. But scrolling down to the bottom, we see that I now have my Chatter functionality. So I can write a comment related to this record, and it will be put on the feed post or the feed for this particular record. But say I want a little bit more functionality. Maybe I want to have the followers from my feed also shown on here. Well, I can do that by changing this to feed with followers. A little code editing here. And what I want to do is tell the set the attribute for show header to be true. And then, again, I'll go ahead and just save the page. And now I've got my detail with my feed down here, as well as my follower functionality, which is really nice. I didn't have to write any controller code. I didn't have to do anything. Just drop that on the page.
Dave, that's awesome. So you didn't have to write anything additional, and you have the chat. You have now Chatter in your custom Visualforce page.
Absolutely, and I've got a lot of functionality too that is present in the standard pages with regards to Chatter, such as this nice little pop-up with all the followers, paging on it, and additional kind of goodness. Now, this is not the only place where I can put that. I can move this anywhere I want on my page. And so, for instance, I'm going to put it above the detail listing here. I'll go ahead and click Save, and now it's up above the detail listing. So I can see everything that I want to see. I can put it anywhere that I want in my Visualforce pages.
So, Dave, you're talking about following, and that's something people do for contacts a lot. What if you wanted to just embed some smaller amount? What if you want to just be able to follow some contacts?
Well, I've got another page here called Contact List. And this is just a simple page that has a page block. We're using a standard controller in this case, and we're grabbing the record set controller. And then I've got a couple of columns in here. So if I want to add the ability now to be able to follow this, imagine this is a custom object or something like that, I can do that very easily, and let me show you how. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this column here and just replace a little bit. So I'm going to call this, instead of last name for the header, I'm going to call this follow. And then rather than use an Apex output field down here, what I'm going to do is get my Chatter follow component. And once I set the entity ID on that to the contact for this row, then save the page, you'll see that I now have a really nice ability to follow and unfollow these records. So I didn't have to rebuild anything. I didn't have to hack anything together. It's all just there for me.
And Dave, you said a key point there that this is for contacts, which is a standard object, but it doesn't have to be standard objects, right? If you had projects, anything.
No, so as long as the object has been configured for Chatter, in other words, it's set up to produce feeds, then you can use those components with those objects.
That is really powerful.
So the next thing that I want to talk about is security and sharing. We've got a couple of new features, some bigger than others. I think that security and authentication has become a real prime focus for developers on the platform. It's always been something that we put a lot of effort into for users of our products, but now developers have even more options. And so one of these is single sign-on. We've had single sign-on for a while. What we're introducing here is the ability to single sign-on into other systems leveraging the Salesforce.com identity. We're also introducing OAuth 2.0 support, which is very exciting. This simplifies the OAuth process. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar, OAuth is an authentication protocol or specification that is used to authenticate very securely without passing usernames and passwords around. And so we're supporting 4 different authentication flows for Winter 11. One is web server flow. This is the ability to, from another site, be able to bring up a page in Salesforce, log in, and then pass the authentication back to the original site so that it can then act on your behalf. User agent flow, on the other hand, is what you would use for client-side technologies, whether it's a desktop application or an application running on a device. The user agent flow is appropriate for that. And then we also have SAML assertion flow, which is what you're using if you're already using single sign-on to talk to your LDAP directory or ActiveX or Active. Geez, I haven't used Windows in so long. Active Directory is what it's called. And then,
some
of
people
course,
are still using it.
Yes, and well, they should. The final flow is username and password flow, which is much more of the traditional way of authenticating. The big caution here is that we're advising that you move away from that if you can, because you're passing usernames and passwords back and forth over the wire, thereby exposing them to theft. So one final thing with regards to security and sharing is we now have a new feature that's really aimed towards administrators, but it's worth hearing about for a developer as well, is that we're introducing parallel processing for sharing rules. Processing the sharing rules on records with a lot of records and a large hierarchy of roles and profiles can take a really long time. It basically, you touch every record. And so to help ease some of that pain, we've got this new feature called parallel processing, and it's just what it does just what it says. It allows you to be able to reprocess those sharing rules in parallel, thereby gaining a lot of performance. So that's just some of the things. There's a lot more detail around these, and I can't emphasize enough that people should go to developer.force.com and check out the release notes in detail. And so, Sarah, I'd like to turn it back to you for Sites and Visualforce information.
Awesome, Dave. So I've got, as Dave mentioned, we have some features bigger than others with Sites. We don't have anything huge coming in Sites, but we do have some really important features that are really going to help you evolve your sites. First one I want to talk about here is URL redirects. So you might have content that might have moved or might have changed, but you've gone ahead and really racked up some good positioning in your search engine rankings, and you don't want to lose that. So the URL redirects are a great solution for you. Let me just go into the product, and let me show you what I'm talking about. Let me log into my org, and I'm going to go into Setup, into my site. And you see I've just got a very simple site set up here. And there's a new button that appears called URL redirects. Setting these up is simple as pie. All you do is input your source URL. And you can select these to be permanent or temporary. You have both of those options. And go ahead and click Save. And then once you save that, you have the ability then with a click to activate or deactivate your URL redirect. So they're that easy to configure, and this really makes sure that you're able to keep, as I mentioned, maintain the search engine rankings for important content.
Yeah, so that doesn't seem like a very big thing, but for all the web administrators out there, this is really critical for being able to properly maintain your site as well as maintain all the work that you've put into SEO.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that I want to talk about with sites is the ability to customize the My Profile page. Now, there's a difference when we talk about sites between unauthenticated, anonymous people coming to your site and having a portal where you have people log in and maintain an identity really with you. And this My Profile page is a way for you to really tailor that experience and what that profile page looks like. So let me just go back over to the product real quick. I'm going to return to my site detail. And if you've configured a portal, you'll see underneath the button for login settings, you'll be able to turn this on. And when you do that, you have the ability then now to come into your profile page and override this with some custom Visualforce. So let me go back to the screenshot. That's the capability to customize the My Profile page when you have a portal set up for your customers. Since I'm talking about portal, something that is very near and dear to web administrators' hearts is tracking the licensing and being alerted when you're reaching any limits. So we've added 2 columns here to your usage licensing report of your monthly logins allotted and the monthly logins used. So those are really important numbers that you want to stay abreast of. And then we've also enabled you to see this information, see additional information in your workflow rules, so you can be alerted of any particular items that you need to. Again, with Portal, some additional features. Something that's not necessarily impossible to do right now today, but it's a little bit arduous, I would say, is that enabling your users to have self-registration. And what we have now is this notion of the person account, and we have a class, the person account portal user, that allows you to create this person account. And we've got some sample code for you to help you do this, and this should make this feature. Anybody creating portals definitely uses this, and definitely check out the documentation to figure out how to implement it. So Dave showed you a really awesome demo about components for Chatter, and same thing that we've added for knowledge base. So just like in Chatter where Dave showed you in Visualforce where you can add the follow or the feed, for your knowledge base now you can add the ability to do ratings for your articles. So that's some really exciting addition for anybody that's got knowledge base and wants to add that componentry to your site. Okay, so that's a highlight on what's coming with Visualforce and sites. And now for the developers on the phone, let's talk about this awesome tooling and see your demos, Dave, for the developer tools.
Yeah, so we've made some significant progress with regards to tools available to developers. This is not the IDE that you're seeing here. This is the new and improved system log. And rather than try to explain this all with pictures, I think I'll go ahead and do another demo if I may. Let's just flip over there. The system log was introduced, was introduced last release, and I'm happy to say that it's going to be GA in the Winter 11 release. So let's just go ahead and bring up a page here. Or first of all, I'll bring up the log. So when you initially bring up the log, there's a link on the old system log that says try it now. So just because you see the old log, don't worry, the new log is available to you. Now the new log has a lot of different panes that interact together, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and execute a piece of code. Now I've created a very simple function inside of a class in Apex Code to demonstrate this. So I'll just execute that now. And what I see is beginning at the top, I've got a list of all the logs that were captured by the system log. Now, these logs aren't limited to what you execute within the system log, of course. When you load a Visualforce page, it will create a log entry as well. On the left-hand side, I see a nice stack trace of all of the code that executed in my little test here. And you can see that I've got a little bit of branching going on. Within that branch, I'm updating contacts. And you can also see on the execution log where you are within your source code on the right. So this is really handy for trying to consolidate your log entry with a specific piece of code that's executing on the system. One of my favorite features of the log is this new limits tab down at the bottom here. And this gives you all the information that you need to know about limits and how your code is maybe approaching or possibly exceeding limits. You can also use this to help enhance the performance of your code, optimize your code.
So this makes it much more efficient for developers to debug and really tune your apps, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the log is great, but you really need a way to process the log. And to demonstrate how you might be able to use this, I'm going to go to my log demo class. And what I'd like to do is fix this so that it actually breaks. And what I'm going to do is remove that field from my select statement and then flip back over here and re-execute this code. Now, one way that I could do this, obviously I'll see in the status over here that instead of success, I've got an error indicated. And so finding the error amongst all these statements could be difficult. But with the log now, we have this great capability of filtering. And so I can start typing in something like exception, and now I can see exactly where in my code my error is coming from.
So Dave, not only did that filter to that exact exception, but it brought you to the place in the code where it was stepping through at that moment when you had the error?
Yes, and I want to make one thing very clear that I'm not actually stepping through this code. This is replaying what happened.
Yes.
But it does take you
not
right
a break
to that. There's no such thing as breakpoints at this particular time. Another interesting thing is that when you can use the filter to also find data inside with the variable assignments. You can also find some of your debug statements. So if that's the way that you want to search your log, you can do that as well. So that's a quick overview of the log. Of course, now that I've discovered my error, I'll go ahead and fix my error. Save my class and then re-execute my log and make sure that my status says success, and so I'm good. So that's the new execution log. It's really pretty awesome. Hopefully you guys will see this as an incremental step towards hopefully one day having some really decent debugging on the platform. So another great tool that comes in handy in finding sometimes impossible to find errors is our View State Inspector. We announced the View State Inspector again last spring, and we're going to make it GA for winter. And so let's go ahead and take a look at this demo. I've got another Apex or Visualforce page that I've created here called Contacts. And this page just provides a list of contacts and allows me to click into the contacts and, looks like I've got an error here.
Oh, no. That error doesn't look very helpful, though.
Yeah.
What is the view state? I don't understand.
How do we begin kind of trying to figure out this error? Well,
I don't know. I wouldn't know what to do.
View state is actually the data that's passed between the controller and the page that allows those two things to stay synced together.
Okay.
And so it's data being passed from the page and data being passed to the controller, and combine the two make ViewState.
This is telling me it's too big, but how do I know?
I
don't know.
That's the hard part. Well, with the ViewState Inspector, now we have a way to actually kind of inspect this, and I can do that by clicking through and opening all of these components.
It looks like it's getting a little bit smaller in size there.
Exactly. So as I'm drilling down here, I can see that the controllers is 90% of the total view state. And if I keep going down into the contacts that I'm trying to display, I see that I've got them grouped here, and I can go ahead and click into that group. And I look and I see right off the bat my first one has almost 18K of view state being taken up. And then there's more down here. So let's just go a little bit farther into this. And what I'll see now is the data being sent by the controller to my page. And I can see that on my page there's this one field that's dominating my view state.
Do you even need that field, Dave?
Well, it turns out that I don't on this particular page. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that field from the select in my controller. I'll go ahead and save that now. And what we see is my page now loads. I can see what kind of view state savings that I've obtained. Now I'm down to like 7K for the whole page. So that would have been really impossible to, not impossible, but very, very difficult to discover. Now this page also allows me to click onto one of these contacts and then edit their email. I don't mean to be dragging. It doesn't actually look like it's working, so maybe I can use my ViewState controller to help me figure this problem out.
Would your ViewState actually tell you what value is being passed into that field?
Well, you're getting a little ahead of me there, Sarah, but if we crack this thing open, we can see that on the last interaction between the page and the controller, the page was sending a contact ID up to the controller to process. And what's really being sent is a value,
that doesn't look like a contact
the
ID.
Name of the contact, not the ID. And so clearly I've made a very simple mistake and put the wrong field in for that value. So I'll just change it to ID now, save my page, and see if it works. So we'll click on Rose Gonzalez. See, now I've got the appropriate behavior.
Applying her information, you can update the email now. Wow.
Yep, now I can update the email and save it. So that's the ViewState controller. It's another tool to put into your tool belt as a developer to give you a lot more efficiency in debugging your applications. So Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit about application lifecycle?
Yeah, Dave, I do. So developers, Dave's shown you some great stuff to be able to, debug your apps and tune them, and then once you've gotten them to a perfect state and you're ready to deploy them from a sandbox to a production environment, we've given you that feature of change sets in Cloud Deploy. But a lot of you have said, hey, just like I test out my code, just like I test out my UI, I also want to test out my deployments. So what we've given you is this new feature to be able to test out those deployments by clicking the Validate button, which is the new button that will appear. And then when this deployment goes into your target environment, say it's production or a staging environment or QA, you'll see that it's deployed with the state of validate only, and you'll be able to see the results and be able to also, again, know in the deployment history that that was just a validation deployment. Some additional functionality is really added to give you that, that gut check and that ability to say, hey, what was really deployed in this change set? I really want to click in and see the source of that code, or I want to see the source of that custom object. And with a click of a button now on all the componentry that you have included in your change set, you can then dive in and see, okay, maybe this custom object was really missing a field, or maybe I was missing the code or the code was wrong. The other thing that we've enabled you to do in change sets is we've added the ability to include profiles in your migration. So previously, you could do your custom objects, your Apex code, Visual Force sites, all that stuff. And now we've added the ability to add profiles into the components that are included in your change sets. So that's really exciting for people. And now I'm talking about sandboxes and going from sandboxes to production. And Dave, I think you have something that people are just going to be really happy to hear about, right, with Sandbox?
Well, yeah, we have some exciting news with regards to Sandbox. Prior to Winter 11, all sandboxes were on a monthly refresh cycle. In other words, you couldn't refresh the sandbox from your production org shorter than a month. And so now you can refresh your developer and configuration-only sandboxes every day. Now, that doesn't mean that you can migrate data. This is only for developer and configuration-only sandboxes. Also, sandboxes can now be deleted even if it's not exceeding a sandbox limit. So when you delete your sandbox, you still have to wait the 24 hours for the developer or configuration, or the extended time for a full sandbox. But now you have much more control over your sandboxes, which I think is really awesome.
I'm sure there's a lot of applause going on in the background on the phone.
Just type clap clap into Twitter, pound winter 11, and that will suffice. In addition to those sandbox restrictions that we're loosening up, we also have removed some governor limits, and I think most developers are pretty interested in that. So the ones that we have removed are the total request time. This is for HTTP callout or for a web service callout. And prior to Winter 11, I think we timed out after about 10 seconds or whatever.
Yeah.
And so now this has been removed so that when you go to make a call out to that other very slow cloud, Azure, I don't know, something like that, it won't time out on you, which is really great. We've also increased the maximum size of a call out. So this means that the payload that you can send to another service is increased, I think, from 100K to 1 million, which is really a big payload. Now, we've also raised some limits significantly. In particular, we've increased the heap size from 2 megabytes to 3 megabytes. So that's a 50% improvement in the amount of memory that you have at your disposal on the system. Classes and triggers can now contain up to 1 million characters, not including comments and test code. So this was, again, at a very low 100,000 limit. Now it's up to 1 million characters.
I think that validates the pervasiveness of Apex code and how robust of a language it is and how fast it is, that people are really using it and wanting to add more.
Oh, absolutely. And what goes hand in hand with that is the ability to host more Apex code within your organization. We've raised that from 1 megabyte, doubled it to 2 megabytes.
Wow.
So the trend here is as we learn, as we listen to what you guys need, we're doing everything that we can to give you that elbow room, to give you the ability to be as expressive as possible when creating your applications. So that's all I've got on governor limits. Back to you, Sarah.
Thanks, Dave. So we are really edging out on time. I'm going to go through these really quickly because I actually want to have Dave spend a little time on a surprise we have for developers at the end. One of the new features coming with Winter 11 is the drag and drop report builder. So anybody that's created reports previously on Salesforce, you could do some really powerful stuff, but it was a little bit hard to figure out. And now this is completely interactive in real time, and anybody that understands how to drag and drop fields on a screen can build some really awesome reports. The other thing we've included in reporting is now you can add chatter objects to reporting as well. So not just your custom objects and your standard objects, but also the chatter that's going on in your org. And dashboards as well. We've added all this great functionality, drag and drop dashboards. Satej and Scott are going to go into this in more detail in their section. I don't have time for a full demo, but I'm going to go in real quick and show you guys what I'm talking about at a very, very, very high level. I want to emphasize there was actually an hour-long deep dive that we did on just the reporting, and you can find that on our YouTube channel. So if you go to your reports, just like you would in any other time, what you'll see is the ability to create a new custom report. And let's see here. You have the ability to just go ahead and click Create. And what it brings you into, you obviously get a tutorial that you can view, and it gives you all the information. You can just drag and drop all this stuff in real time and drag them onto your report and do all of that. So it's a really awesome tool. Now, I mentioned we have a feature that's coming into pilot that we want to be able to talk about today. And so, Dave, this is something I know mobile developers will be really excited about, and most people will be really excited.
Yeah, so drum roll, please. And what we are announcing is the pilot program of our brand new REST API. We're introducing a REST API because there's a lot of use cases where the SOAP API isn't quite as easy to use as the REST API. We also want to leverage the HTTP standards that are available today to really harness the power of the web. Also, the developer experience is very near and dear to us. And so using REST APIs really does simplify the entire developer experience. You might be wondering why these REST APIs. Well, a lot of Web 2.0 and mobile projects are leveraging REST APIs on other platforms today, and we've heard the demand, we've heard the suggestions, we've seen the ideas. Please give us a REST API. Our new REST API is going to support XML data format, and I think more excitingly, finally, we're going to be supporting JSON as a native output format from our APIs, which is very, very cool. A little bit about the REST API. It is tied fairly closely with the OAuth 2 support. And so a web app or another device still asks to authenticate, which will bring up the OAuth 2 screen. Once authentication is done, you would choose your operation and then make HTTPS requests and then handle the response, either JSON or XML, you decide. And what you see in the table down below are an early look at what we're thinking about doing, and we're looking for feedback in the pilot program on this with regards to the URI for the resources. And as you can see, this list of URIs provides full CRUD capability in a very short number of things to remember, right? So this is what we're talking about when we talk about the semantic web. You can read this and understand what the API is doing. We're supporting get, post, patch for updates and delete. And we're, as I mentioned, we're in a pilot program, and we're looking for early access program participants. So you can shoot an email to dcarroll@salesforce.com if you want to participate in this, and we'll see if we can get you hooked up.
I think your inbox is going to be full after this webinar.
Well, that's okay. That's a good thing. That's a good problem to have. This really is going to enable the developer to be able to create applications and integrations in a very easy way, because we're no longer hooked to depending on a toolkit that may be one or two releases out of date and that kind of thing. So it's very exciting.
Well, that's awesome. Well, so that's the end of the features that we have that we're talking about for the platform for Winter 11. We're going to transition over in a minute to our Q&A session. Before I do that, these slides will be available on developer.force.com/releases along with the replay. So what you see in these charts is the descriptions of which ones will be automatically enabled, which one might require configurations, and which ones might require you to contact us. For example, Dave just talked about that REST API pilot. And a reminder that everybody's going to get Chatter on, so if you have any questions about that, go to chatter.com/getting started. We've got some great upcoming events. The developer team is just slam-packed busy. For Java developers, September 9th, tune into that VMforce webinar. It's the Enterprise Java Cloud powered by Force.com. Awesome stuff there. September 15th, anybody in the Chicago area should go ahead and go to the developer meetup. And on the 28th, we've got another webinar on Adobe Flash Builder for Force.com. So that's a really awesome IDE which helps you embrace the power of Flash and build some awesome applications. So we're going to be going over to a question and answer period. A reminder of some of the resources that you have here. I've talked multiple times about developer.force.com/releases. Visit Trust to find out when the actual schedule is. Post ideas on the Ideas Exchange, the release notes, of course. And then something I want you to pay attention to is that the developer team really, we want to hear what you want to talk about in these webinars. So give us your feedback at this survey. The bit.ly link /winter11. It actually should be 10 a.m. I did not update the slide. I apologize. So winter 11, 10 a.m. So with that being said, what do we have on tap with our questions?
Well, there is a question here from the audience regarding, will any chatter functions be available in the customer portal? And we don't have any plans to make chatter functionality available in customer portal or partner portal for that matter in the Winter 11 release.
Yeah, what other questions do we have here? Are there differences in how chatter will work in mobile versus mobile light? So what I showed you today was actually a different application. It was the new Chatter mobile application. So that application you saw on the iPad and the iPhone was Chatter only. There's a separate apps that you have for the mobile application, which you can get the full Salesforce where you can look at opportunities and all of that information.
Yeah, and Chatter works in both mobile and mobile light
yes.
in very much the same way. So there's very little difference as far as Salesforce Mobile with Chatter and Salesforce Mobile Lite. iPhone, BlackBerry, those are all great. What about the Android?
Mom's the word right now. We're doing iPhone and BlackBerry support, so that's what we've got right now.
That's what's coming in Winter 11.
Winter 11, yes.
And Android is obviously an important platform, and it is part of our mobile roadmap for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, there's a question in here. Let's see. This is a long question. Let me see if I can get a shorter one. So here's one for you. How do I get the iPad Chatter app?
How do you get the iPad Chatter app? Well, this is, as we mentioned, this is coming in the Winter 11 release. So right now, you can't get it, but when Winter 11 actually rolls out, that's how you get it. And what you do is go on the App Store, and that's where it would be made available.
So this is another great question. Will non-licensed, that is non-Salesforce.com licensed users be able to participate in Chatter Desktop?
So for this question, I want to point out to people that you can add Chatter-only users to your org, and just talk to your sales rep about that because it's very cost-effective, and you'll be like, wow, the efficiency and productivity we get is just so worth it. But it's a very easy way to add. You don't need to have full Salesforce licenses for all those people.
So if I want to include my entire warehouse team in the Chatter that's going on in my company, I can just get them Chatter-only licenses,
right? Which
are a substantial discount from full Salesforce licenses, which they wouldn't need anyways.
Right. And as you saw, I mean, I just did a very simple example. With Scott and Satasia, they're going to go in a lot of detail on some of the great benefits you have by having Chatter users. So they're just going to wow you with the collaboration that you can do. So definitely stay tuned with that. What do we have?
Well,
what else do we have here?
There's a question about if my managed package includes Apex code that references Chatter feeds, will the package require that the customer have Chatter enabled? So the answer to that is no. The idea here, if we actually mentioned this on one of the slides, is that there's a pattern in which you can detect whether or not a feature is enabled in your managed package, primarily in your Apex code, and then gracefully degrade the functionality of your application to exclude the chatter feature.
And one thing I should point out, I don't think if I covered this on the slide, you can actually have a configuration that says whether or not your package requires chatter or not. So you can decide if you want that application to be rolled out to only chatter users. But if you wanted to have non-chatter users, then you can gracefully handle that.
Does Salesforce to Salesforce support chatter?
This keeps coming up. So chatter it's really a secure way for your company to collaborate, and it does not go out on the public web. So right now there's no Salesforce to Salesforce with chatter. It's all within your own company.
Yeah, and we're definitely exploring and researching the ways that we could maybe extend chatter to your partner network, of course. Let's see. There's just so many questions. By the way, we're not going to be able to answer all these questions.
Wow, there's
at least while we're here live with you, but we will answer all the questions and publish the answers on developer.force.com within a couple, 3 days. Give us some time to answer these. So we will address all the questions that you have today. So do the portal changes that you mentioned apply to both partner and customer portals then?
I'm assuming we're referring to my profile pages and some of those, and yes, they do refer to both partner and customer portals.
Oh, yes. Great.
What's this question about the licensing information available in workflow rules? Yes, that is the portal licensing as well.
There's a question here called, can I see this from the debug log list? And just to help us out, if you can, when you're asking your questions, you're asking two in a row, they might get disconnected when we compile them. Unfortunately, I'm not sure what we're referring to there, so just a word of the wise in future webinars. Is the new system log UI also available for debug logs? So the information that's shown in the system log UI is the debug log. So I think you may be referring to the debug monitor, which is just another place where that log surfaces. It's actually the same log. But you cannot, you won't be able to go to the debug monitor and use the system log to maybe export some of those and then import them into the system log.
Dave, there's a question here about the report builder I want to answer real quick. There's a question of whether that's GA and on by default, or do I need to get it turned on? And this is an excellent question because this is going to be on by default, and you actually do have the ability, if you configure it, to still see the classic one if you want, but you can also turn that off. So this is not something you need to contact Salesforce to get. By default, you will get the new report builder, and it is going GA, so it's a really exciting product.
Well, at this point, I think we've run out of time for questions, and so what we'd like to do is thank everybody very much for taking the time out to listen to what we have coming up for the platform in Winter 11. And I implore you to stay tuned for what's coming up new in the applications for Winter 11. Thank you, and have a great day.